You know, in this life, a man is often judged by the noise he makes, by the size of his shadow on the screen, or the loudness of his convictions. But as I've ridden through the decades, I've learned that the most powerful truths aren't the ones shouted from a soapbox or printed in the gossip columns. They're the quiet ones. They're the ones that sit deep in a man's chest, like an old ember that never quite goes out, no matter how hard the wind blows. People have spent years poking around my life, trying to find a secret, a scandal, or some hidden doctrine. They look at the Duke and they see a man of iron and dust, but they wonder what kept that iron from rusting. They ask about my faith, searching for a label to pin on my lapel like a campaign badge. But where I come from, faith wasn't a performance. It wasn't something you put on like a clean shirt for Sunday service and then tossed in the hamper for the rest of the week. To me, faith was a silent altar built in the middle of a wilderness where the only witnesses were the mountains and the Creator who put them there. I didn't grow up in the shadow of great cathedrals with stained glass that cost more than a ranch. I grew up with the sky. And let me tell you, when you spend your days under that vast, blue canopy, you start to realize that you're part of something so much larger than your own petty ambitions. My hidden religion wasn't hidden because I was ashamed. It was hidden because it was sacred. It was a private conversation between a man and the Almighty, held in the quiet moments before the cameras started rolling or in the long, lonely hours on the trail. It was the belief that there is a right and a wrong, written into the very fabric of the universe, as real as a canyon wall and just as unyielding. I saw men who talked a good game about salvation but couldn't keep a promise to save their souls. And then I saw men, rugged, dusty, forgotten men, who lived with such integrity that they made every breath a prayer. That's the kind of faith I respected. A faith of action, of grit, and of a steady hand when the world is shaking. There's a comfort in the silence of the high country that you just can't find in a crowded city. In the silence, you're forced to listen. You hear the heartbeat of the land. And if you're quiet enough, you hear that still, small voice that tells you which way the trail goes. My faith was forged in those moments. It was the knowledge that even when I was the lone rider on the horizon, I wasn't truly alone. There was a presence there, a strength that didn't need a name but demanded respect. I've always believed that a man who doesn't look up at the stars and feel a sense of awe is a man who's already dead inside. That awe is the beginning of everything. It's what keeps you humble when you're on top of the world and what keeps you standing when you're in the deepest valley. It's the hidden engine that drove the Duke through every storm, every battle, and every sunrise. Monument Valley was my cathedral. Those towering red buttes, standing like ancient sentinels against the passage of time. They preached better sermons than any man in a pulpit ever could. They spoke of endurance. They spoke of permanence. They spoke of a design so grand that it made all our Hollywood dramas look like child's play. When I stood out there, feeling the heat of the sun and the grit of the sand, I felt the presence of the architect. Some folks call it nature, but I knew better. It was the hand of God, reaching down to remind us that we are just guests on this earth. My religion was rooted in that dirt. It was the belief that we have a duty to tend to the land, to protect the weak, and to walk with a straight back. It wasn't about complex theories. It was about the simple, rugged truth that a man is responsible for the tracks he leaves behind. If you leave a trail of broken promises and wasted lives, no amount of fancy words is going to save you. I remember one time, we were filming a scene where the wind was howling so loud you could barely hear yourself think. The crew was frustrated, the horses were restless, and everyone was looking for a way out. I walked off by myself for a minute, just looking at those rocks that had seen 1,000 storms just like this one. I realized then that my faith was like those rocks. It didn't need to move, it just needed to stand. In this business, they try to change you every day. They want you to be softer or louder or more like whatever the latest trend is. But a man with a hidden foundation doesn't blow away like a tumbleweed. He stays rooted. My faith was the anchor that kept me from drifting into the ego and the vanity that swallows so many good men in this town. It was the quiet knowledge that at the end of the day, I wasn't answering to the studio heads or the critics. I was answering to a much higher authority, one who doesn't care about box office receipts. You see, I've always felt that there's a sacredness in hard work and a job well done. To me, doing your best for the folks who paid their hard-earned money to see a movie was a form of service. It was a way of honoring the life I was given. I saw the divine in the craftsmanship of the set builders, in the courage of the stuntmen, and in the loyalty of the fans. My hidden religion was a religion of the everyday. It was finding the holy in the handshake, the sacred in the sacrifice, and the eternal in the mundane. People looked for a secret conversion, but the real story was the constant, steady walk. It was the decision, made 1,000 times over, to choose the hard right over the easy wrong. That's where the real battle is fought, not in some grand arena, but in the quiet corners of a man's own soul, where only he and his maker know the truth of the matter. I was lucky enough to be surrounded by people who carried their light without blinding everyone with it. My wife, Pillar, she had a faith that was as steady as the North Star. She didn't preach at me, she just lived it. She showed me what it meant to have a heart that was open to the world but anchored in something unchanging. And then there were the priests I called my friends, men who understood that a cowboy's soul is a different kind of territory. They didn't try to corral me into a pen, they just walked the trail with me. They understood that my relationship with God was like a wild stallion. It needed room to run, but it also needed a firm hand on the reins. We'd talk for hours about things that had nothing to do with movies and everything to do with what it means to be a man of principle. Those conversations were the bricks in the wall of my inner sanctuary. There's been plenty of ink spilled about my final conversion, as if it was some sudden change of heart at the last minute. But a man's life is a long road, and every step I took was leading toward that final destination. I spent years observing, reflecting, and testing the weight of different truths. I saw the beauty in the ancient rituals, the way they connected us to the generations that came before. It was like finding an old trail map that had been used by your father and his father before him. There's a comfort in that continuity. It reminds you that you aren't reinventing the wheel. You're just trying to keep it turning in the right direction. My faith grew like an old oak tree, slowly, steadily, and with plenty of scars from the storms it weathered. It wasn't a secret because I wanted to hide it, but because some things are so precious that the more you talk about them, the more they lose their shine. In Hollywood, everyone wants a piece of you. They want to know what you eat, what you think, and who you're praying to. I learned early on to keep the most important parts of me behind a closed door. I didn't want my faith to be turned into a PR stunt or a headline. I wanted it to be real. I wanted it to be the thing I held on to when the lights went out and the world went quiet. It was the whispered prayer in the back of a car on the way to a set, the silent thank you for a beautiful sunset, and the plea for strength when the body started to fail. That's the hidden religion of John Wayne. It wasn't a secret society, it was a private devotion. It was the understanding that as much as I was the Duke to the world, I was just a man named Duke to the one who made me. And that realization is the most liberating thing a man can ever experience. A lot of folks think that being a man of faith means you're supposed to be soft, or that you've somehow lost your edge. But let me tell you, it takes a lot more grit to follow a moral code than it does to follow your own whims. My faith didn't make me a saint. It made me a man who knew he was a sinner and tried to do better the next day. It gave me the backbone to stand up for what I believed in, even when it wasn't popular. It gave me the courage to look a man in the eye and tell him the truth, even when the truth was uncomfortable. You see, when you're accountable to something higher than the court of public opinion, you don't worry as much about what people say behind your back. You worry about whether you can look at yourself in the mirror without flinching. That's the grace that comes with the grit. When the big C came knocking on my door, it wasn't my bank account or my Oscars that gave me peace. It was that hidden foundation. I knew that I had ridden the trail as best as I could, and I knew that the sunset wasn't the end of the ride. Faith gives you a perspective that goes beyond the horizon. It allows you to face the unknown with a steady hand on the plow. I've seen men who had everything the world could offer: fame, fortune, power, but they were terrified of the dark because they didn't have anything to hold on to. I didn't want to be like that. I wanted to be like the old pioneers who faced the wilderness with nothing but their trust in God and a sharp axe. They knew that as long as their spirit was unchained, they were never truly defeated. That's the legacy I wanted to leave behind. Not just a collection of movies, but a reminder that a man's strength comes from within. My hidden religion was also about forgiveness. I made my fair share of mistakes, and I stepped on plenty of toes in my time. Learning to ask for forgiveness and learning to give it is the hardest part of any faith. It's like trying to break a stubborn mule. It takes patience, humility, and a lot of sweat. But once you get there, the burden you've been carrying just drops away. I realized that holding on to a grudge is like carrying a sack of hot coals. It only burns the man holding it. My faith taught me to let go of the anger and the bitterness, to focus on the trail ahead rather than the potholes behind. It taught me that every day is a new opportunity to get it right, to be a little kinder, a little firmer, and a lot more honest. That's the kind of religion that works out on the frontier, where the air is thin and the truth is the only thing that keeps you alive. As the shadows grow long and the campfires start to flicker out, I look back and I see that every mile I rode was part of a larger design. The hidden religion wasn't just a part of my life, it was the life itself. It was the way I shook a hand, the way I tipped my hat, and the way I stood my ground. It was the quiet assurance that there is a purpose to our struggles and a meaning to our joys. We don't need to overcomplicate the message. Just be a man of your word. Protect those who are smaller than you. Respect the land and the people who walk it. And most of all, keep your eyes on the horizon, knowing that there's a light waiting for you that never fades. The Creator doesn't judge you by the roles you played on a screen. He judges you by the role you played in the lives of the people around you. I'm proud of the work I did, but I'm more proud of the peace I found. It's a peace that doesn't come from the world, and it's a peace that the world can't take away. It's the peace of a man who knows he's been forgiven and knows he's headed home. So, as you ride out on your own trails today, I hope you find that same inner compass. I hope you build your own silent altar in the middle of your own wilderness. Don't be afraid of the silence. It's where the truth lives. Don't be afraid of the grit. It's what makes the grace feel so sweet. Keep your powder dry, your heart open, and your spirit unyielding. The frontier of the soul is the last great mystery, and it's a journey worth taking with everything you've got. I'll be waiting for you at the end of the trail, where the air is clear and the horses are always fresh. This is the Duke, signing off for now. It's been a long ride, and every mile has been a blessing. Keep the faith, stay true to your code, and never, ever give up on the light. There's a whole world out there waiting for men of honor, and I have a feeling you're exactly what it needs. Happy trails, my friends. We'll meet again where the sunset turns to a new day and the trail never ends. Ride tall and keep your eyes on the stars. Until then, stay tough. Stay true. I'll see you at the big roundup in the sky. Goodbye for now, but not for good. The Duke is out, but the message remains. Keep riding.